All right, back at it again. I got my biologists are on shore, and I am going to show you guys a quick 360 where I am. Straight ahead is where they're on shore, and they're climbing that tree to see baby eagle up there. That is looking straight south-southwest. That is Diplock Island, D-I-P-L-O-C-K, if anybody's interested in Googling that up. And here is where I am. So, well, I'm sitting here for I don't know how long. I'm gonna get people's voices heard. Not a bad gig, huh? No pressure of having to catch fish. I don't know where these waves are coming from. Now, what do we got? Listen to this one. Let's get right into it. Mark is red. Alright. Good day, Steve. I won't mention my name due to my area of employment. I live in Bay City, Texas. June 24th, around 4:15 a.m., I walked out of my front door to walk one of my dogs. Immediately to my left, I noticed something take off towards the back of my house. The feeling in my stomach wasn't a good one. The house next door is vacant and the backyard is overgrown tremendously, which makes a perfect staging area. There's also a public park at the back end of my property. However, I still needed to walk my dogs to use it because I work 14-hour days. I took off on the street to walk the street route to the park. I kept looking back and around to pay attention to my surroundings. Once I arrived to the park, I looked towards my backyard. It's pitch black. The only lighting was a light pole near me at the park behind me. When I looked towards my house and the high brush, there was eye shine. I know was over 6 feet tall easily, looking at me, and an orb that appeared like for 2 seconds. It all disappeared just as fast as it appeared. I was terrified. Thinking to myself, I don't want to see shit. Just leave me alone, please and thank you. I used to be so terrified to the point of leaving my home for weeks before returning. I never told my family the reason. I didn't trust telling anyone, fear of being labeled crazy. I've been able to trust and tell 2 people over a 2-year time span. One of my friends had her own encounter in Oklahoma, so she understands me completely. Now I get mad, Steve, because I don't want to be bothered by whatever it is at all. I'm not trying to have any kind of encounter whatsoever. I want to be left alone. But whatever it is, keeps on visiting my property during the middle of the week, it seems. I added motion sense lighting on all sides of my house. It doesn't seem to work. And I keep my dogs inside. I love them. I can't imagine leaving them outside knowing what I know. I don't believe I'm the only one in my neighborhood experiencing something, but as usual, nobody's talking. However, I don't blame them. I sent you 2 emails some time ago. I'm not sure if you've gotten a chance to share. Thanks for this platform and for all that you do helping people to have a voice on this matter. Hot as hell in Texas. No doubt it's hot. Thanks for that email. Kind of sucks to have that nervousness of talking. It's too bad you didn't have the emails of everybody in your neighborhood and you could just shoot them this video and then just start banging on doors and seeing who wants to talk. I don't know what more I can do to encourage people to quit being scared of people. I don't like being scared of anything myself. If I find myself nervous of something or scared of something, it pisses me off, and I will expose myself to whatever that issue is until I get over it. But that's just me. But I just wish I could somehow convince everybody that hears me speak to quit being scared. It's a tough thing to do with humans. It's such a characteristic we've had ingrained in us. I don't know if it's more for our own personal survival, it's a natural thing, or has it been ingrained in us so we're easier to control? It's one or the other. But anyway, Texas, coincidentally, the first time I was exposed to the extreme hot was just outside of Uvalde, which has been on the news lately. Very sad story there. And I was around the Nueces River, and it was springtime, and I'll never forget, it was 90 degrees out at 10 o'clock at night, and I just could not believe it. Being from Canada, right? So I can relate to your heat down there. But listen, from what you've described so far, nothing threatened you, right? Nothing's threatened you, nothing's banged on your house, looked in your window, tore your dog in half, stole your food, chased you, thrown sticks at you, knocked on trees, throwing rocks at you. None of that list came up in your email, so I would try to possibly, just like you say, speak out loud. I know you're here, you know I'm here, leave me alone. Just leave me alone. Works for me, but it doesn't sound like you're in any kind of danger. You might want to just keep practicing that and keep telling yourself as well, hey man, I haven't been threatened in any way. I'm not in danger. But go with your gut. No matter what I say or anybody else, you go with your gut on everything, right? But it'd be good if you could share this video with your neighbors at least, and so you can get somebody to talk to, right? There's a lot of people here to talk to, that's for sure. That is for sure. And you need, again, email again. All right, that helps. Email again, email more. All right, this is titled A Long Bigfoot Story. It doesn't look long to me. Let's get into it. I'm not sure about the date, but one early morning in the summer, maybe 15 years ago, I stopped by my next door neighbor to say I was going up in the mountains to check on huckleberries and whatever else. We lived in Spokane County, and at the time I frequented the mountains to the north and east. She said she wanted to go with, and so me, my two Great Danes, and her took off to North Idaho, north of Nordman. Heavy wilderness, very rugged mountains, absolutely gorgeous country. We got to the first stop and parked. Right away we found that at that time all the fire road gates were closed and locked, but you could still walk in. We got out, went around the fire road gate, and started on our mountain hike. Not far along, being an avid outdoors type, I noticed very fresh dung in the middle of the trail, jet black and steaming. As I stopped to check it out, my Great Dane Ava passed it by like it wasn't there. This is the first indication of something odd going on, as she had a biological problem. She ate all dung she came across. I tried to get her to quit that quirk, but nothing I did worked. Her being an alpha female and very headstrong, my buddy Janet was next to me, and since I stopped, she too stopped, saying, "Should we be worried?" I said, "Nah." "And why would you worry? We have Loki and Ava along." We moved forward, but I was more alert since that dung was so fresh, and the fact that Ava walked right by it, not giving it a second thought. To ease Janet's unease, I called Ava over and told her that Janet was nervous, so stay with her. Ava stuck to her like glue. Where just prior to that, her and Loki had been circling us in a very wide circle, checking our entire surroundings and having a blast. Janet felt more at ease with her bodyguard next to her. Meanwhile, Loki had come in as well. And as we continued, he walked right ahead of us about 30, 40 feet, and suddenly stopped dead, like he hit a brick wall. And I could tell that he was listening to something that we could not hear. He was cocking his head back and forth, listening intently, like someone was talking to him. I said, "Hey, Loki, is everything okay?" He turned, looked back at me and Janet, wagging his tail like, "Yeah, all's cool." He came back to us since we stopped, and I said, "Since all is well, let's keep going." So he took off ahead of us and again hit that same spot, stopping like he hit a wall. But this time you could see that he was not just being talked to, it was more like he was being scolded. Check my surroundings, all good. I'm drifting right now, you guys. Loki hated being yelled at or talked to in a harsh way. Again, I said, "We okay?" And he again wagged his tail. But when I said, "Are we going to keep going or not?" he turned around and bolted for the truck, running downhill fast. I then turned to Janet, saying, "That's our cue, you." Or, "That's our cue." And we too headed back to the truck. As we're walking down the hill, one side of the trail went up the mountain covered in very heavy brush about 12 feet high. On the other side was a pine grove leading down to a whitewater stream. All the trees had been limbed up about 12 feet, so you had a clear view to the water down below. That too should have been something to take note of as we were in the wilderness. As we're walking down, we encountered that horrible stench, a cloud very heavy, and we could not escape it. Suddenly Janet stopped and said, "Something very heavy is coming downhill behind her." And then she said, "It stopped right behind her. Can you see anything?" As she was looking at me with her back to that very steep, brushy side of the mountain, I looked past her and saw a face watching us about that 12 high brush, about 12-foot high brush. Okay, let me read that again. Typo. I looked past her and I saw a face watching us above that 12-foot high brush, but told her, "No, nothing's there, let's go," not wanting to freak her out more than she already was. We got down to the truck and, being right next to that whitewater stream, decided to take the dogs over to get water. But the dogs not drink. That water was freezing cold. I noticed right away that there was gold all over that stream bed. The water was crystal clear, and the sun, being so bright that day, flashed that gold. I told Janet I had my pan and gear, let me get it. I tried my best to get some of it, but the speed of the water flow and the insane coldness made it impossible. We tried for over an hour and finally gave up. We packed up the gear and dogs, heading deeper and higher into the mountains. As we were traveling about 15-20 minutes down the road, all of a sudden I noticed my hearing, vision, and head cleared up, not having realized anything odd was happening during our encounter. I immediately said to Janet, "Did your senses just clear up? I think we had an encounter with a Bigfoot back there." She said, "Yes, hers cleared up too, and isn't it cool we had that encounter?" Now I get it. Bigfoot has the ability to mentally control its surroundings. The next big reveal is the fact that when I told one of my native friends about this encounter, he matter-of-factly said, "I know that stream well. There has never been any gold there." Bigfoot put that vision in your head, knowing how we like shiny things, so he could get his family out of there by keeping us occupied. LOL, it worked. I told the story to the BF blah blah out of Idaho State University, and the person that took my account agreed with me that they too believe Bigfoot is a changeling, as well as having the mental controllability thing. So, this encounter is one of 3 that I've had over a period of 20 years while living in Spokane County. But this one I have singled out since answering my many questions regarding Bigfoot and why no one has ever caught one. And sightings are both brief and somewhat rare. They happen by accident or on purpose to those that are deemed to not be a threat. I moved and now live about 45 minutes from Mount Rainier. I hope this tale helps your listeners. Love your videos. Not a problem using my real name, Gary Brown. Lastly, I'm not surprised to hear that they are a hybrid. But if you watch the Animal Planet show on the origins of mermaids, their claim is that during the last Earth cataclysm, Waterworld, both humans and Bigfoot were forced to adapt by becoming water creatures. That all 3 of us are branches of the same tree, natural, not manufactured or manipulated, just adapted to survive. And so here we are. Peace be with you and yours. Okay, Gary, thanks for that, man. Take from it what you will, everybody. You'll leave it, right? Using reference to it, for me personally, referencing a TV show for any kind of knowledge, I'm out. I'm sorry, but I'm out. I don't watch TV. I refuse to. My attention is on the people and no one else. Nothing else but the people. That's just me. Alright, here's another one. Thanks again for sending that in, man. Sounds like an interesting experience. Kind of a mild... Your reaction to seeing a face seemed kind of mild to me. Now, North Idaho, Sassy. Hello from Idaho, Steve. My husband and I hunt a lot together. We were out deer hunting at a place known as Bunko. It was steadily raining, but not heavy. We drove around and found an old log and road trail. We pulled up, stopped, and because my mobility isn't great, the hubby went exploring for a deer, hoping to jump one for me. He walked up an old skidder trail, and while I watched him round a corner to the left, out of sight, I saw a large, dark figure moving pretty quick to the right. It would have been right out of the hubby's vision. I thought it might have been an elk. He jumped, but apparently not. The hubby came back around the corner, notably shaken, and insisted I go with him. I followed him, and he pointed out the two huge 18-inch plus long human-type footprints. The parts that shocked me were, A, the prints were heading in the direction I thought I saw an elk. B, there were only two prints, one on either side of that 9 to 10 foot trail with, and C, there was rainwater just starting to puddle inside the tracks. I'm not a girly girl by any means. In fact, I would rather be in the mountains away from people, so this whole scenario intrigued me. I have often in my life felt the old ones before smelling or catching a glimpse of them. And this time, I got a glimpse. But apparently I had an elk on my brain and not anything else. And this is why I thought it was an elk I saw. I believe these guys are all over. I often feel them in certain areas I go to in the mountains and woods. But I am forever speaking, mind speak, to them. I even call myself a chatterbox to them. I've heard wood knocks, gibberish, and whistles many, many times. I, like you, just mind my own and carry on. The eeriest part for me, with an experience, would be the dead silence in the woods. I hate that part. Keep doing what you do, and thanks for the non-judgmental vibes you give off. Happy hunting. Sandy in Spirit Lake, Idaho. Sandy, we're on the same page. I can feel the pressure from numerous areas I frequent, and I agree, I don't like the dead silence either. It doesn't happen, the dead silence doesn't happen often to me, but when I mentioned to all you guys about that antler being left on the trail, I have taken note that once I do hit that elevation on that mountain, especially around where that antler was left on the trail, the pressure's always there and the dead silence is always there. It's weird. But I still seem to always go there, and I have been frequenting that particular slope for like 15 years. And shit has gone on all the way circumnavigating that slope everywhere. Everything on the list of what could happen has gone on around there, not including missing people. Well, my biologists are pissing off the eagle. It's fluttering above the nest. I'll be sharing that on another video. You guys can see what we've been doing here. Now, let's keep the ball rolling. Thanks again for sending that email. Absolutely appreciate it. You know you're not alone, right? No one's alone now. All right. What do we got here? This is titled 3 in 1. Hey Steve, power to you, power to us, as we awake thee to this greater reality. I have 3 stories to share. I'll keep them brief, refraining from telling the life story of every person, even remotely connected to them. I may even throw in a few commas, periods, and paragraphs as I go. All right, it seems to be optional here, so whatever you got, let her rip. My first story comes from my mom, so you can take this one to the bank. My mom grew up on a farm in northern Ontario, a tiny place called Moonbeam, Ontario. Ironic, I know. One morning in early spring, my grandfather was enjoying his coffee, looking out over the back 40. Then, as he described it, the biggest bear he'd ever seen ran out of the bush on 2 legs straight up to his 1,200-pound prize bull, and with a single swat broke the bull's neck. Then, like a groom scooping up his bride to carry her across the threshold, turned and headed for the brush. My grandfather grabbed his gun and made it out the back porch just in time to see his prize bull disappear into the woods. He tracked the pair for half a kilometer, then poof, nothing. Holy shit. Stranger still was the fact that at no point had this creature put the 1,200-pound bull down, which would have been easy to detect since there was plenty of snow on the ground. Snow, holy shit. The grandfather probably died believing that was the biggest bear he'd ever seen. Something tells me it was no bear. Second story. 1967, I was 10, trapping with my other grandfather up the Groundhog and Ivanhoe rivers. He had built a cabin at the junction of the 2 rivers, the furthest point of the loop. As we arrived to the cabin late that day, which was about 200 feet from the river, we knew something was wrong. First, there was a terrible stench in the air, as though someone had lit a dog on fire. Then, as we made our way up to the camp, I could tell by the look on my grandfather's face, this was no bear attack. The door had not been only opened, but was completely missing, only to be found 100 yards up the trail. Next, the 300-pound cook stove was also missing, only to be found the next day 100 yards down the trail. In the cabin, every box, every container had been opened, and every individual wooden matchbox in a case of 20 had been opened. My grandfather said nothing to me. I guess he did not want to freak me out any more than I already was. Strangely enough, that was the last year my grandfather trapped. Third story, 1995. I was working at a healing center in Australia where we would take people through a 10-day cleansing and healing. We would often have healers, Aboriginal shamans, and psychics come and work with us. On one occasion, we had a psychic woman come. She asked we, the staff, to cut pics out of magazines and put them in the envelopes, and she would later tell us what they were. My pic was the famous Patterson Sasquatch photo. That night, she was batting 1,000, correctly naming what each pic in the envelope was. When she got to my envelope, she picked it up, and her face went completely deadpan. Dropping the envelope, she said, "They are working with the ETs and disappearing people. They must be stopped." I opened the dropped envelope, and sure enough, a shaman friend once told me that amongst his people, they believe that when the Sasquatch shall make their presence known, it shall be a sign of the end times. I think that time is rapidly approaching. I also believe that, like skunks, they can turn that smell on and off. Well, how interesting is that? Well, next time email, right away when you're describing your grandfather's trapping cabin, I had almost that same style of experience. I gotta go into my big chest. The big chest I use as a coffee table in front of me in the man cave. That's full of photographs to the top. Thousands of them probably, from guiding from years back. And I have a photo of a cache that we rode our horses to, probably, I don't know, 2-day ride into the mountains, North Alaska Highway, past Fort Nelson. And we're talking remote. And what a cache is 4 posts. You single out 4 trees, roughly about that much diameter, and you make a ladder with your axe and your nails and your saddlebags. You always got nails and an axe and a small chainsaw packed to the pack horses, and you cut the 4 trees. You chop them off around 14, 16 feet high off the ground. Chop them off same height, put a timber across the tops, and then put timbers across the top of that. So there's roughly a 4-foot overhang all the way around. And you put all your remote camp gear on top of that, and then tarp it. And then you throw your ladder away and lay it on the ground. And that had been sitting there for the year. Well, there's about a 150-pound wall tent was bundled up in a package on that platform. And you instantly made me remember this. That wall tent was about 150 yards down the trail on the river bank, and no teeth marks in it. And every single plastic container, every single thing was opened and scattered and all over the ground everywhere. And I was with these 2 redneck cowboys. They're from up north, and I kept saying, "So what do you guys think this was?" One guy goes, "Probably Wolverine." I'm like, "Wolverine?" Yeah, so he shimmied up the pole, then he used his fingernails, and he went 4 feet over up, and then he tossed that wall tent 150 yards away, right? And then they were getting agitated. They didn't want to talk about it. I just want to go about cleaning it up. But anyways, getting back to the disappearing people. I don't know. I'm on the fence. Dave Plattis has investigated the missing people, obviously, and he has stressed to me a few times that in all of his investigating, he's never come across any Sasquatch researchers that have disappeared, been harmed, or anyone else, for that matter, who's been directly assaulted by a Sasquatch. That's what he said. All right? So, again, take from it what you will or leave it, you guys. We take from everybody's experience and what they feel and think, and we take from it what we need or not. I'm gonna videotape that guy. He's up at the nest right now in the eagles, and I'll be right back. Caught that on video. I'll share that with you guys hopefully in this video. This same video. I'll hopefully add that in. Yeah. Thanks again for that email. Appreciate it. Keep them coming. Alright. Here we go. This is red. You know, I got 10 emails done yesterday. That was pretty good. 10 people heard yesterday. Hi, Steve. My name is Pat McKenna. You can use my name. I don't care. Good for you, man. I was born and raised in Western Washington. I'm not an avid outdoorsman, but I spent a good part of my life in rural areas and enjoy the beauty of the backcountry in and around my area. My experiences may not be as intense or surreal as others, but they're experiences. In the nearly 41 years I've been riding this weird blue rock we're on, I've experienced some pretty crazy shit. The off-topic ones I won't go in depth on, but I've dealt with the paranormal since I was 3 years old. As it goes, I'm fairly sensitive in that area. I'm kind of a magnet for the bizarre and effed up. Anyways, down to it. There have been countless times I haven't given a second thought to until I started watching your channel. Like being at a remote spot at a river and hearing rocks thrown in when I know there's no one within miles. One time that stands out is while camping with family out around Mountain Loop between Darrington and Granite Falls and hearing whoops on the hillside. I've even woke to people speaking what sounded like loud gibberish off in the distance in the middle of the night on one occasion. I kind of wrote it off as a drunken banter from neighboring sites, though looking back, nobody occupied the sites the noise was coming from. I never attributed any of it to Sabe until recently. My most intense experience, however, came when I was 15, about 1997, I think. When I... One sec. When I was hiking with a group of kids from the home I was staying at. We were about 7 days into a 10-day hike in the Cascades near Elam, Washington. Clellam, Washington? The staff of the group I was hiking with decided to split us up and have us build our own shelters away from the core camp. I went out about 100 yards from the main camp and set up. The staff came through just before dark to check on me and bring dinner. I ate my dinner and shortly after that lay down to sleep. At some point in the night, I woke to footsteps outside my improvised shelter, which consisted of 2 black garbage bags and a small 3x6 foot tarp in the traditional tent/lean-to type configuration, tied between 2 trees about 6.5 feet apart. The opening was in the center, around where my waist was. At first I thought it might have been one of the staff, but it was pitch black out. Not even moonlight was getting through the trees, so they would have to have had a flashlight. Then I thought maybe it was a deer, but the footsteps seemed way too heavy. I could feel them. That's when I got scared. I froze. I couldn't breathe, and all the hair on my body stood straight up. We had seen a black bear earlier that day, so my brain immediately went there. My brain was racing. I was $150 soaking wet. No way I could take a black bear, and this damn thing is now less than 5 feet from me. It stopped just outside the opening in my shelter, close enough that I could hear it breathing. But it wasn't sniffing around like a curious critter would. It was a long, deep breaths, and it sounded like they were 7 or 8 feet above me. I wanted to scream, but I just lay there holding my breath for what seemed like an eternity. Then it talked to me in my head, and it said, "Don't be scared, you are safe." A wave, let me check my surroundings, the wind's coming up, pushing me closer to shore. Then it talked to me in my head, it said, "Don't be scared, you're safe." A wave of calm came over me, and without a sound it was gone. My brain continued to race for what seemed like forever, but I did manage to get back to sleep. I asked around in the morning who checked on us, and asked the other kids if they had heard anything. Nobody checked on us, and everyone had stayed put for the night. They could see I was freaked out and reassured me it was probably just a deer. And That's the story I stuck to avoid any ribbing from others. I've always listened to people about things like this without judgment, and in turn have shared my own experiences. But I've never felt comfortable sharing this one until now. Thank you for what you're doing here. I've been on the fringes of society, watching the world slowly succumb to the will of these sick, power-drunk freaks that are now blatantly dragging us all to hell with them for over half my life now. If we knew even half of the information they withhold from us, there would be an uprising of biblical proportions. They know it, and it scares them. They don't want us armed with the knowledge of our ancestors or the means to defend ourselves from their tyranny. Absolutely agree. Stay strong, neighbor, and keep doing what you do, and thank you. Thank you. Absolutely appreciate you and your time that you just generously gave to all of us. It's funny, just had a thought reading that one about the hair standing on end. Because you know how we are all energy. Obviously, there's no doubt about it. We are energy, our bodies hold energy. And you know when you have friction, you know, static electricity, we call it static electricity, and it makes all the hair stand up, rise up. I was wondering about that. Now, is it the energy of whatever whatever it is that freaks us out? Is it energy that's making our hair stand on end? Or, now remember, many of you know the tale of the native men who were taken into the military, used in the military because of their stalking skills, and they had long hair. Nobody could sneak up on them ever, and they claimed that it had a lot to do with their hair, and then they gave them the military cuts, and it killed that extra sense that they had. Now, knowing that one, I forget, was it Navajo? I think it was the Navajo. Anyways, but going on that note, I wonder if, when we're being freaked out, our sixth sense is kicking in, I wonder if our hair all stands on end so that we can perceive and pick up more, extremely more, as a preservation, as a defense. I wonder if that is why our hair stands on end when shit's going down. I wonder. Because I wonder if it's because our hair on our body is picking up way more. I'll bet you there might be something to that. You never know. Oops. Stupid phone. Logging out like that. Alright. Where are we? Gotta get back down the list. Olympic Peninsula. I grew up looking across the ocean to the Olympic Peninsula. Hello, Steve. It all started with a Bigfoot show on a Friday night on TV. It was the night before opening day of modern firearms season for deer in 1987. My brother Steve and I watched the show at our own homes. We talked over the phone and made plans for the next morning and laughed about the Bigfoot show. My brother was 25 and I was 19. The area we headed out to was an area just north of Aberdeen, Washington called Bear Gulch. I've not known this particular road he had scouted days earlier. I remember the intersection on the Logan Road as it was very unique. We left the truck in the moonlight and walked quietly down this road. It had alder trees that were rubbing on our arms, even though we were walking in the middle of the road. This road was simple. Everything on the left had seedlings that were 3 to 4 feet tall. Everything on the right was marketable timber, 100 feet tall. I guess the roads were punched in and rock laid down and the trees were stacked along the road. And all the way to the end was a field with little swamp grass in it. Around. I took the second road to the left. I snuck out close to the end to wait and let it get light. I was packing my 30-30 Winchester. My brother continued on with his 30-30 Winchester. We'd had a scope. After I could start to see, I snuck out the rest of the way to the end of the road. For almost a minute, I could hear some twigs snapping just off the road below me. The land sloped down and away from the road, but very walkable orange clay. If it was dry, and it was, I snuck out maybe 20 feet and down 8 feet. I could still hear the twigs snapping. All of a sudden, small rocks. Sorry, I just gotta look at the shoreline. I'm getting blown in now. All of a sudden, small rocks the size of nickels started to land all around me with the force of someone tossing them underhand from up on the road. I said to my brother, "Knock it off, there's a deer down here." The rocks didn't stop. So I became angry, and I walked back up to confront whoever's throwing the rocks. I thought maybe I'd screwed up someone else's hunt, if it was not my brother. I get up on the landing, and my brother's not there. Nobody's there. The road is 80 to 100 yards, and I can see very well, and nobody's there in the seedlings. I'm dumbfounded. The rocks had stopped before I could see up on the road. About 10 seconds later, much bigger rocks started to land all around me. They were bigger than a baseball and smaller than a softball. One would land about 20 feet in front of me and roll and bounce close to me. They would have knocked me out cold if it was to hit me in the head. I looked up into the trees to see where the rocks were coming from. They were coming out of the trees about 8 feet below the tops of them. I was still not thinking Bigfoot. They're not real. I was thinking anti-hunters up in the trees with huge slingshot to get rocks to go that far. For 2 seconds, I pointed my rifle up at the trees and realized I could not see who was throwing the rocks, but they could see me. I put my rifle down to my waist and crouched behind a big stump. A few minutes later, I could see my brother about 800 yards away and walking back up the other road. He was going to walk right under the trees the rocks were thrown from. I was still scared and angry at these anti-hunters. My brother walked out my road as I stayed behind the stump. He walked up and said, "What's wrong with you? You're white as a ghost." I showed him all the big rocks had been thrown, 10 to 15 of them. They had a different hue to them. They were river rock and not orangey from being near the clay. I had a death grip on my rifle when we walked out to the truck. I didn't see anything up in the trees. The very next weekend, my brother talked me into going back out there to the same road. The weather was different. We didn't think the anti-hunters would be there, and it was foggy. We separated again. He went straight down the road like before. I went to the right, this time into the timber, but stayed on the road to check for tracks in the clay. I couldn't see more than 50 feet or so. I walked along one side of the road looking in the clay for tracks all the way to the end. The road turned to the left and went down gently. At the road end was a big landing for log operations in the future. As I started back up the road, I saw the front half of a Bigfoot print with toes and no claws, and it was fresh too. I was in the club. Hair turned to razor, safety was off. I thought my heart was going to jump out. My hearing went away, like in a war movie, muffled. All I could hear was my breathing and heartbeat. I humped it up and out of there, never to return. Over the years, I've told some people, but I'm amazed at how stubborn people can be that wasn't even there. The arrogance of that. Your channel's been a big help. I always knew that throwing a rock that big requires a thumb, but couldn't understand no one on the landing throwing the little rocks. Your channel has answered some of the questions I've had all this time. They must have cloaked when I reached the top of the road. Another question is, are they marsupial? Have a pouch? How did they get all the rocks up there? Did I catch a young one in the morning sneaking away? Was the rock a diversion? Could they tell I didn't believe in Bigfoot and left a track on purpose? Steve, for all you have done, I consider you a brother from another mother. I think they can cloak anytime they want, and I don't think they like to just, I think they can cloak anytime they want. I don't think they like to, just like I don't like to wear my three-piece suit. One more short story from in Quinault, Washington. Okay, one sec. Gotta make sure everything's safe here. The shit-eating weather's coming in here. Quinault, that's where I went with Dave. Allowed us to speak publicly. In the summer, my hunting partner and I would scout and cut trails for easy and quiet walking during hunting season, what we call the jungle. Over the course of 2 days, we cut a trail in maybe 3/4 of a mile. We would not cut the trail all the way to the logging road, but would stop 20 feet from it so no one else would see or use our trail. He was a timber cruiser and ex-military. When cutting the trails in, we would cut branches off the trees that were in the way. It was a Junk, unmarketable tree, we would just cut them down. We would stack the branches on piles off the sides so they wouldn't be in the trail and in our way. On the second day, we could tell that bears were sleeping on a couple of our branch piles, we figured. We completed the trail. We wanted to connect up to 2 good hunting spots. The next weekend, we went to check out our work on the trail, expecting to see some elk sign, maybe, as game animals would use our trails also. The stumps of these trees are about 5 inches tall as I cut them down with a bow saw. I intended to finish them off with a sawzall. These stumps had flat rocks stacked on top of them. 2 to 3, maybe 4 stumps. I asked my hunting partner if he had done that, and he said no. Sometime, while taking a breather from trail building, we'd go to the river and skip rocks in the water. So maybe it was a gift. These rocks had been found, carried, and stacked on those stumps. This is about 2015 summertime. One more short orb story if you want. My family and I was camped out in our travel trailer in a club on the Wainuchi River. Late one night around midnight, my daughter and I were still up, letting the fire die down. I felt like someone was staring at me. Nothing dangerous, but someone was watching, maybe a fellow camper. I was seated in the camp chair that rocked back and forth, so instead of getting up, I just pushed it back, stretched my neck, and back to look. And there was an orb, about 20 feet off the ground, about 50 feet away, a little bigger than a basketball, almost perfectly round, but it was oval, like egg-shaped, only the fat end on both. It had definite edges, no fuzziness, and it was silent. I told my daughter, who looked up to see it. It slowly went towards the river, going into the trees, but still did not make a noise. We got up, went in the trailer, locked the door. A few days later, my daughter and I was talking, and it sounded like she saw something different. I had her draw it. It was different, and what she saw was more directly above us. I was scared, but not freaked out. I've hunted Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, Washington, and Oregon, mostly for elk, but the Olympic Peninsula is my favorite. Steve, I almost met you and David Plattis at the casino on the coast. I didn't want to catch COVID, so I didn't go. I later did in September 21, spent 91 days in the hospital in Seattle, the whole month of October, incubated. I missed all of last year's hunting season, but lived. I came home in late December on oxygen, 24/7 now. Damn. But I'm still healing. Maybe it won't be a life sentence. I had 3 months of How to Hunt to catch up on. Thank you, Steve, for getting me back out there through you and your camera. I know we're not the apex predator out there. I packed my 44 mag with my own hand loads, 300 grain partition handgun along with a Remington 30-06. I don't want to have to shoot whenever. Signed me, Olympic Peninsula Chris. I spent time admiring Vancouver Island from Hurricane Ridge. Well, there you go. Throwing the rocks. Don't know why they do it. Haven't a clue. I have a feeling from what I'm learning from our First Nations friends, it's young ones that do that, from what I understand, messing with us. From what I understand, most of the messing can be attributed to the young of them, apparently. What else? I know of a logger on Vancouver Island working for a logging outfit, a welder who's working on a gate, and came across 3 heads of deer that have been basically twisted off of the bodies and left on the ground. And while he was working on the gate, small pebbles were bouncing off the hood of his truck from the timber above him, and he took off. Your story reminded me of that story that I remember reading years back. It's an interesting ride, isn't it? And it's funny how often those rocks are described as not being from that particular area. It's like they were packed from a river somewhere. That's really interesting too, isn't it? And confusing as hell. But anyway, I think I have yet another hour left here because they just snatched that eagle baby out of the nest and they lowered it down to the ground, and the biologists are going to be taking samples from it and then sending it back up the tree, and then the guy's got to climb back down the tree, and then they all got to pile into my Zodiac, come back out to me. So Man, what happened to our view? This weather sucks. Alright, I'm going to take a few minute break. I'm going to have to switch up cameras because I think that camera's SD card is about to fill up. Keep them coming in. That Olympic Peninsula, I've always been curious. I'm guessing it's predominantly black-tailed deer across the whole peninsula, right? No mule deer, I'm guessing. I know there's a pile of elk there. I think you guys got mountain goats too. I don't imagine there's moose there, but you never know. Anyways, I'll be back shortly, you guys. Thanks again for those emails. Alright, back again. I scared the shit out of myself. I was getting close to the rocks and I went to turn the boat on and it wouldn't start. I'm like, oh my god, I've got no power. Are you kidding me? And then got a quick little shot of adrenaline because I was only about 20 meters off the rocky shoreline and I got those people over there depending on me for survival. I raced to the back and I managed to get one of the small motors down and started that to get backed out of the rocks, thank God. Well, I guess while I was sitting here reading, I bunked it into gear so it wouldn't turn over and start. Dumbass. Huge relief though. Now you're gonna hear a sky crane is the back sound. If you can hear that, sky crane is what they use for helicopter logging. Now, let's get back into sharing a couple more. I think there's 20 minutes left on that SD card. So that should be a few voices anyway, maybe, right? Excuse me. So it's titled A Wild Summer in Carter County, Kentucky in 2017. Hey Steve, love your channel, what you do. Keep up the good fight. My name is Eric Weiss. Weiss? W-E-I-S-S. Use my name, nothing to be ashamed of. I'm a medically retired SFC from the United States Army. I did 22 years of service in 4 deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. It was the summer 2017 after my last deployment. I took an active National Guard job as a training NCO at an engineering company in Olive Hill, Kentucky, located on the eastern side of the state, close to the West Virginia border. I bought a 32-foot RV and moved to a dead-end gravel road on a 40-acre farm that an Army buddy's parents lived on, surrounded by hollers. Everything was going great. It was a nice, peaceful place, very quiet. I was on the back 40, hooked up to an old abandoned farmhouse for electric and water. The first night that something weird happened, I was asleep in my RV and something smacked into the side of my RV. I jumped right out of bed and grabbed a pistol. Trust me, I was ready for a war. I had weapons stashed all over the inside of this RV. It was just me living there, so I was not worried about my kids getting my weapons. I may have been a little paranoid after my 4 tours of doing route clearance and convoy security. I was one of the few that dismounted with a metal detector to find the bombs. Sorry, I'll read that smoother. I was one of the few that dismounted with a metal detector to find the bombs on the road. Ugh. We were stationed on the Afghan-Pakistan border, and trust me when I say it was like the Wild West. We got more action than we could have imagined. But no giants or Bigfoots, lol. Back to the banging on my RV. I also ramble, lol. Okay, man. Make sure I'm not gonna hit anything. There's a boat fishing off to the side of it. I thought that maybe a tree branch or a bird flew into my RV. My curiosity had me, so I grabbed a gun and a spotlight and went outside. Nothing, not a branch, dead bird, nothing. I heard no noises in the woods, come to think of it, and it was super quiet. And at the time, I was not thinking of Bigfoot. This happened probably once a week for 2 months. And every time, nothing, no signs, no noise, no thought of Bigfoot. Another time I was walking down the road around midnight from the main farmhouse to my camper. After having a bottle of courage juice around a fire, I was about halfway to my camper. It was a dark night, no moon, when all of a sudden I had a horrible amount of fear come over me. I mean, I felt terrified, as if something was just inside the woodline, back in the darkness, and I could not see a damn thing. I don't think I ever felt this terrified, even in Afghanistan or Iraq, when I had that gut feeling shit was about to go down. The next thing that happened was the biggest mistake I've ever made in the woods, even with a pistol on my side and a fifth of courage juice in my system. I ran with everything I had for the next quarter mile to my camper, and I mean Usain Bolt would have not caught me that night. I hear what you and David Plaitis always say, do not run. But for some reason I was gone. It was stupid, but I made it, and now I laugh at myself for it when I think about it. I had this uneasy feeling 4 other times way back in the sticks and the trails. I was not alone on these trips. It's not as bad though. Twice I had the farmer's grandkids on my Polaris with me back at the waterfalls. I did not say anything to the kids, I just got us out of there. I was always thinking this is my paranoia, and I was freaking myself out, maybe from my PTSD, always thinking there's an ambush or a setup, or a great spot for one. But every time I listen to my gut, after hearing your channel, I'm glad I did those times. Now for my main encounter. I'd moved my RV up the main house to work on it. Myself and an army buddy were setting in my camper bullshitting and sipping whiskey, reminiscing the glory days and the bad days overseas. At 2 a.m. we heard the farm across the road dog start barking, and then 7 gunshots. Not super unusual for Eastern Kentucky, but we did each grab a gun and walk outside to listen, when my buddy saw a shadow move through the field in the moonlight across the road. We each thought maybe a meth head was up to no good and had a death wish. We walked down the drive and laid prone in the high grass in the horse pasture. We were laying prone. We heard something walking in the woods to our left, but we could not hear every step. We would hear one at our 1 o'clock, then our 3, then our... Okay, sorry. We would hear one at our 1 o'clock, then 3, then 5. We said that some bitch is circling us, so we moved as stealthily as we could back towards the camper. As we're standing in the driveway by the camper, we heard something move to our 8 o'clock position behind the pine tree right by the garage. With adrenaline pumping, an itchy trigger finger, some courage juice, and a buddy, neither of us wanted to be a pussy in front of the other, lol, and honestly a little irritated thinking someone has come out here to steal. We walked over to the pine tree, pistols drawn, and a handheld spotlight. I lit up the tree, and there, 10 feet up, was a set of eye shine, yellow eye shine. At first we thought, okay, we got an animal, a raccoon, a big cat, maybe a bear in the tree. But after staring at it for a few, the eyes were too far apart to be a coon, and the steps we heard were too big. Having enough of this, I gave my buddy the light and I said, keep the light on it, I'm gonna flush it out. I walked around the front of the garage to come around the backside behind it. Right before I rounded the corner, and I mean right as I was about to step around, I was hissed at, like a big cat would. I jumped out of my boots damn near and ran into the driveway. I was really freaking nervous. I just realized that was no meth head or coon. I was thinking a big cat. There had been a panther seen in the holler every few years to have her cubs and then would leave. We heard it walking off through the horse pasture towards the road. So we walked towards the road, took a prone position, and again, whatever it was, crossed the road. All we could see was a big blackish shadow in the field in the moonlight again. Laying there confused, all of a sudden, a pack of coyotes started howling. And I mean yelp, howl, bark. It was a big pack, and they're going nuts, but not but 150 meters to our 11 o'clock. Then the loudest roar, scream, growl I have ever heard in my life. It lasted at least 10 seconds, felt like it was on top of us. It went right through my chest. I could feel it. And then, just like it started, it was over. No coyotes, no noises, dead quiet. After this encounter, I came across your channel, and I've been obsessed with Bigfoot ever since. I was always somewhat believer, like 75%, but now I'm 100%. Trying to research the area and sightings, I've heard of a 10 to 12 foot grayish-white Sasquatch seen over the years in this area, Carter Caves, Kentucky. I heard that story on your channel. I was living 25 minutes from there. Background boat sounds. I struggle with going out in the woods at night and in the day now. I do not go out and enjoy the woods as much as I used to, but I'm trying. I moved shortly after the incident in Kentucky. I now live in northern Michigan on a 132-acre old dairy farm. I talk to them and let them know I'm not here to hurt them or find them. Just, I know you're there. Let's coexist quietly. LOL. Yeah, me too. After watching your channel, I started hearing of Dog Man in Michigan, so I'm like you. You got to be freaking kidding me. LOL. Thanks to your channel and villagers, I now fully understand. I never smelt anything, and did not ever hear someone talk about the hissing until I heard you talking about one of your First Nations friends talk about the one staring at him over a stump hissing at him. Your channel has explained all the weird knock sounds, feelings in the woods back in eastern Kentucky. It is crazy, after all, that how I never tried to find tracks. The next day, it is almost like it does something to your mind, where you are now in awe. You don't think to do the things at the time that you wish you would have. Now you would have. I still get an uneasy feeling around the woods, but I think living on this farm is my way to slowly get back to enjoying the outdoors. Thank you for the channel and all the villagers. Ghost Round 27 out. Thanks, man. Appreciate you. Glad you survived the war. And your buddy. And everyone else who has. And again, I think that's so far 100% of our experienced veterans experienced at war. The terror of war. 100% of our veterans who experienced the terror of war have all stated the same, that this terror is far greater than the terror of war. That's not a feeling anybody wants, man. But what a skill, what a skill to have. Imagine if we could impose that terror on somebody at will. Can you imagine? Like I've said that before, actually. And then, of course, my twisted little mind goes instantly to terrorizing dirty, filthy politicians. I would terrorize them until they were putting themselves in one of those restraints and threw themselves in a padded room and stayed there forever. I don't think I would relent until they were all in there together. That's just me. Anyway, I don't think I have enough room left on that SD card, so I'm gonna have to crack open my other video camera to carry on. I think these guys should be coming down pretty quick, and then we're gonna go off miles away later and find another eagle nest they have on record, and they flew over the helicopter the other day, and then see if they can't get another chick. Test it. Oh, there's somebody at the beach now. There's our arborist. Perfect timing. I'll be back shortly, guys.